Do you want to be a property investor, but you've got no idea how much rent to charge? Well, in this video, I'm going to reveal everything. Hi everyone, my name is David Siegler and I've been a property investor for over 30 years now. You guys are always asking me, David, I'm going to buy my first buy-to-let. How would I work out what rent to charge the tenants? I'm going to share with you how I would do it so you can do it too. Now, before we get started, make sure you subscribe to this channel and like this video. I'm stood here in one of Progressive Let's properties, and if this was my property, how would I work out how much rent to charge my tenants? It's absolutely crucial that you get that rent right because it affects the value of your investment. The first thing you need to do is look at the rental market locally and work out what other landlords are charging for their properties. Where do you do that? So you can look on Rightmove, you can look on Open Rent, you can look on Spare Room, depending on what property it is you're trying to rent, to get a feel of what's going on in the market. Here's a hint and a trick that you should incorporate into your valuation process. Go and speak to 3 different letting agents. That's what I would do. And I would explain what type of property I have and what I'm looking for, and ask them to value the property for me in terms of the rent I might receive. Then you're going to get 3 different professional views of people who are working locally in the market, and there will be a sweet spot between the 3 figures that you're giving. Might be duplication. It's going to give you an idea of what you are going to get for your property. Let's talk about condition, because when you look at the letting market locally, what you're going to see is very similar properties but in very different condition and states of repair. Now, maybe your property is really smart because it's your first one, you put a lot of love and time and effort and money into it. Make sure you're not directly comparing it with something that's on the market that's tired and worn down, and maybe the landlord isn't reinvesting rent into the property to keep the standards up. That will affect the quality of the potential tenant that you will get an application from. And you really want to have the best quality tenant that you can possibly attract in your property. Now, here's something I learned very recently. We always go on learning all the time. You see, I have properties in an area where I thought I knew what the ceiling rent was, the highest rent that you could probably get in that area, and you couldn't break through that glass ceiling. And so I always pitch my properties at that level. But 1 or 2 of the houses I'd done extensive refurbishments on. I'd really improved the specification. We had feature walls, we had different light fittings, we had chrome electric sockets, and the flooring, maybe instead of $3.99 flooring, what I did was I went $13.99 per square metre flooring with a very nice underlay. So I'd really lifted the quality of the house. How would I increase the value of the rent that I would get in order to compensate me for that? Well, what I didn't understand is it's not just about the ceiling rent in the street, it's about the ceiling rent of the applicant, the person who wants to be your tenant. So because I had always presented my properties in a particular way at a particular price, I always attracted the same type of tenant. There was nothing wrong with those tenants, but they were at a level in terms of budget. Almost by accident, I discovered that by increasing the quality of the accommodation, what happened was I started to attract applicants who had a bigger budget. Here's the thing. If I'd been getting £500 a month for my properties over a period of time, and I thought that was the ceiling, suddenly I've put more value and time and effort and love into a property. I wanted to get £700 a month, but I didn't think it was achievable. Then I realised I was attracting tenants whose budget was £1,000 a month. I never knew that, and I didn't think they'd come and look at my particular properties. But when they viewed my property and it gave them everything they wanted in terms of quality, then their mindset, of course, was, I thought it was going to cost me £1,000. This man's asking £700. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be his tenant. So, make sure that you don't box yourself into a corner where you think there's a ceiling rental for your properties, when in reality, you've got to think about your applicant, your new tenant's values, and what their ceiling is. Give them great value, and it's going to be a win-win. They get a property within their budget, and you get a higher rent. What is the tenant demand for your property? How do you judge that? Well, are there large employers nearby? Are there hospitals? Are there factories? Is there a demand for your property from people who want to live there and build a life there, and they're working there and they're going to bring their families there? You've got to find out what the tenant demand is. Is there infrastructure nearby? Are there motorways? Can people commute? Maybe to higher value areas, but they can only afford to live in your area. Most important thing is that you've got a flow of tenants, because tenants come and tenants go. It's just the way of the world. When they go, how easy is it for you to replace them as tenants in your property so that you get a continuous flow of rent? Another way of increasing your rent roll on one property is to consider, instead of letting it to a family on a single let basis, maybe you could multi-let. Maybe you could rent the property by the room. So if you've got a 3-bedroom house with a reception room and a dining room and a kitchen on the ground floor, maybe you could take one of those reception rooms and turn that into a bedroom. So now we've got the opportunity to rent the rooms to 4 different people. That is a house in multiple occupation. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the detail of that at this point, but if you want to jet propel your rental income from, say, £700 a month to perhaps £1,700 a month, that is a strategy that you should consider for the future. If you want more details on how to do that, if you would like me to share in the future what you should do in order to be able to raise your rent roll to those sort of levels, comment below. And if you want to see it, I will do another video in the future. And my final point is, make sure at all times that you are aware of what the market value for the rent of your property is at any given time. So, tenants will come and tenants will go. When you get the opportunity to re-let your property, have another look at the market. Have rents gone up in the interim? Is it possible for you to increase your rent? If you have a long-term tenant, should you just leave them at the rent that you charged on day one when they moved in? If they've been in the property for 10 years, how do you manage that? The important thing is to make sure that you stay commercial. If rental values have risen, then what you need to do is incrementally increase the rent to your existing tenants and the rent that you are offering to new tenants. How do you increase your rent to existing tenants? Well, your letting agent will help you with it. If you're managing it yourself, perhaps on an annual basis, you might make a small increase to the rent, maybe 5%. So on a £500 a month rent, that's £25 a month. If you do that annually, it soon ratchets up so that the tenant is paying significantly more. Now, you don't want to overburden the tenant, or you might lose a really good tenant. So there's a balance here. Make sure you're getting commercial value rent for your property to serve your investment, but at the same time, if you've got a good tenant, look after your tenant. Great value in not losing a tenant, of having to go through a refurb and taking a month or two of a void before you get the new tenant in place. I hope you've enjoyed that video. Don't forget, subscribe, like, comment below. Tell me what you think, tell me what you want. I'll be back sharing more information to help you on your way.